concerned that in the second page of the report, it talks about repurposing and purchasing computers, laptop carts, or end-use peripherals. And I want to know, are we going to make sure that the district school has all of that equipment as well as the charter school co-located with it, and the same thing with furniture and chairs? Because I've been to schools in my board district as just a parent or a friend or a grandma, and seen that the co-located schools had facilities, well, at least chairs and equipment that were new, where the school that they were co-located with didn't.
Let's have Mr.
That's not such a cool thing.
Well, that was going to be one of my comments as well. I've been visiting our co-located schools, was just at Marina Del Rey Middle last week. Charter school comes and co-locates, as is their right, and then we buy new furniture and new
computers
upgrades.
now,
And so
and
maybe,
laptops.
Ms. Goldberg, maybe it's something we'll work on together, because I'd like to come back to the board with a suggestion to make sure that there's parity. And as charter schools are getting the funds that they do deserve, and charter parents are paying on that bond, that we have a plan to match potentially even dollar for dollar at the traditional school, so that we can turn some of these tense situations into win-wins. Because I agree, it's not fair to the traditional schools who are seeing that.
So I'm to understand that we will repurpose and purchase computers and laptop carts for the charter school, but not for our school? Our school co-located with, that it's co-located with? Is that what I understand?
Let's have Mr. Cole Gutierrez, or who's going to, Prop 39 team, who's going to help us with facilities and equipment?
Mark Hovatter, Chief Facility Executive. Our intent is to try to make each of the schools the same. We've started a program to replace all of the furniture for all of our schools. So far, we've been able to get through the high schools. We work for the middle schools next. It's also our intent as we move forward that if a charter comes in and their facility upgrades to that facility, they get new paint, that we don't just paint the rooms that are being occupied by the charter, but that we'll paint those for all of the school as well.
What about the computers, laptops, carts, and use peripherals?
I'm afraid I'll have to ask someone else to speak to that specifically.
We can have ITD speak to that, but the reason why it's listed here is that if a charter school, let's say a charter school is no longer on Prop 39, then the materials, the equipment, the ITD equipment, the computers are repurposed for the incoming charter school to be used. In terms of the district practice, we'll need ITD to address their upgrades for the system.
I'm looking at this specific $15,920,000.
Sure.
Yes, right, 920,000. We will buy technology with some of that money.
Yes.
Who for? The charter school, the district school, or both?
This is for the co-location, so
Yeah, I'm
specifically
talking
for the
about
charter schools.
co-locate, but
Yes.
not for the school it's co-located with.
I don't understand that to be the ask in this report. This is for the Prop 39 make-ready work. So this would be for the Prop 39 co-locations, for the charter school co-locations.
Who may have lost their computer lab to the co-located charter, right? Because that's an empty classroom in the state, right? Right. Yeah, okay. I see, I can't support us fixing computers and stuff for a charter school co-located with a district school that doesn't have the same technology. That makes no sense to me. Now that it was basically chairs and stuff. This is the first time I've seen a report that included computers and.
So maybe somebody can help us on when are computers part of the program, and it's a little broader than that.
Well, before you answer, if I may, a quick one, I want to piggyback on what Member Goldberg said. A computer lab is not the same as a cart.
Right.
And therefore, one is not equitable to the other. And I want to be sure that when we are making that decision, what's the basis of that decision? Who gets a cart? Whether it's go from room to room. It's a roving cart as opposed to a dedicated computer lab with dedicated computers. And all of our schools don't have that. So I don't know if a cart is in place of or instead of or in addition to a computer lab. I'm not really sure. And how that works into what Ms. Goldberg said regarding the our school, well, let's say a district school and a charter school. Who gets what and based on what? Whose funds are paying for all of that? I'd like to put that in part of your response.
Okay, I have Mr. Vladovic, Dr. Vladovic and Mr. Melvoin on hold. You want to get to these two pieces first?
You want to talk about facilities or no?
The ask today and the money today is specifically for making classrooms ready and available for the new occupants, which are going to be the charters. We have other programs that we use to make sure computers are accessible. There was the question that you'd asked earlier about someone losing a computer lab. When there are classrooms that don't have a teacher assigned to them, they become potentially available.
Yeah,
In some,
I have a school in my very district that lost its computer lab, and the charter school came in and put a computer lab in that. And I want to know who paid for those computers, first of all, and how is it possible for us to lose a computer lab while they gain one? This doesn't make any sense. I'm not saying, it should not harm anybody. That's my goal. It should not harm anybody. And right now, if you have a school, and this was a middle school, they lost their computer lab, the charter school invited the students to come join the charter school so that they could have access to the computer lab. That's crazy. We need to make some changes to this. I know we can't do that here, but I do know that if we're going to begin purchasing for a charter school out of this $15 million, computers, laptop carts, and end-use peripherals, if the school that is hosting them as a co-located school doesn't have those same level of equipment, what are we doing?
So maybe somebody can help us with a broader look at how these things get organized, because it is, Francis is going to, Dr. Gibson is going to help us. I think
Maybe we could
the
hold the item.
question does come out about where, even internally, I think Ms. Goldberg is raising an equity question, and Superintendent, and Ms. Goldberg knows from the days of overcrowding where
my God.
we got to so many classrooms still needed wiring, and so today we've got most of our classrooms with devices, but we haven't finished. So there is an absence of everybody gets wellness inside of the district. In the co-located sites, there are agreements that, but I don't want to be the one to explain. And then I want you to share with us where did we get the rules that determined that when a classroom is perceived as available or not?
Well, that's a state.
Yeah,
That's
go
a
ahead.
state.
Where is Dr. Gibson?
okay.
Maybe we could hold this item?
If I can just
Well,
Okay.
If I can just speak to one of the questions you asked, the specific money that we're asking for now is coming from a bucket, if you will, of money that was established specifically for the purposes of either building new seats for charters or for taking existing classrooms and making them available for classrooms. That does not include building a computer lab
Oh,
for
no,
anyone.
I
There
understand.
there
I
is the
understand,
purchase
but
of...
it's talking about purchasing for them computers, laptop carts, and end-user peripherals, it says.
But they are in direct support of a classroom. We allocate a classroom to the charter and some minimal administrative space, but we do not allocate computer labs to someone.
No, leave aside the lab
Okay.
issue. You're buying computers, laptops, laptop carts, and end-user peripherals for a charter school co-located with a district school.
That
yes?
is correct. That's what
Okay.
this ask is.
So I'm asking, do we do the same thing for the school with which it is co-located?
Good afternoon, Dr. Gibson, Division of Instruction. In cases like that, we work with the traditional school site and we ask them what would be the best possible remedy for them. And we make sure that, like, for example, if they did lose a computer lab, what would you like? Would you like a computer cart, et cetera? Part of the fiscal numbers that you see in here and working with our facilities teams is also sometimes there's low voltage experiences, or we have to change some of the electrical or the security and so forth. So it's not necessarily always something like a device, but in the case where we need to make sure that we support the traditional school site, there are dollars that are allocated for that.
Oh, wait, let me ask, to interrupt, if I may. You just answered the question. You asked the school, since you lost your computer lab, to whom and what? You didn't say that. What would you like? A cart? Well, what other choice would they have? A horse? My horse for a cart for a horse, right? My kingdom for a cart, right? So if, in fact, the computer lab was taken, for what purpose was it taken? And did it show up someplace else as a computer lab for a charter school? How was it not good for one and good for the other? Is that what you're saying?
It's very important to note that the process is localized. And
What does
so-
that mean? What does that mean?
Meaning that those closest to the classroom make the decisions. So the principal working with the local district leadership, they're involved in the process. They are assessed, here are the needs in this area. And we're working with our legal counsel and all of the rules, assess where are the best places to make the Prop 39 matches.
Okay, but wait a minute.
And there is which rooms would be allocated. So
Okay,
the
wait,
central office
wait,
does
wait,
not
wait.
decide the rooms.
I've got to cut you off.
Sure,
But I'm not sure, it's impolite to cut you off, but I've got to
Okay.
intervene here.
sure.
I'm trying to envision a school, a regular school, that's not yet co-located. Here comes the co-locator, and the principal says, you know, I really don't mind giving up this computer lab for a cart. I can't envision that. And if that happens, did somebody else say, thou shalt give it up? You are being displaced from your computer lab when they're always screaming about, you're taking my computer lab, you're taking my resources, something that you're taking and says, the law says if there's no children in there with
An empty classroom.
an empty, what do you call it, an empty class? But how does it become a computer lab, not a computer lab, and somebody else has it as a computer lab? That's what Dr. Gibson just said. The computer lab, the principal has to decide what do they want instead of the computer lab. What happened to the computer lab?
Well, first, for clarity, the law does not refer to the empty space. It used to be that. This is share all space fairly. So regardless of students in a classroom, the law would require that. Secondly, it is the school site working with the local district to identify the classrooms. And of course, these are difficult, complex decisions.
So they
These are not easy.
individualized based on.
So a principal may say, given the circumstances, which, as Ms. Goldberg mentioned, could be challenging. I'd rather not have to do this, but if the law is requiring it, and here's our analysis, and everybody says this is a school site, then the principal would identify those rooms working with their local district leadership. At that point, it continues in the process, and then the charter school will agree or disagree to obtain the space, and then we would continue to make the classrooms available. I want to acknowledge, yes, Prop 39 has its problems, and we are sharing our voice to try to address those problems as we speak regarding this. This has been a priority for the board. We've had efforts for regulatory change. Certainly more needs to be done, and working with the leadership of our superintendent, we can address these other concerns because we all feel those concerns as well. Today, bearing in mind those concerns, and we're happy to meet with every board office anew to discuss a way forward and to advise the superintendent. This is a decision to comply with the law and which type of funding we use, the bond dollars, or if a no vote would be general fund dollars. That's our decision today, is the color of money situation. The decision point for the district, because the board has already delegated the authority to the superintendent in October to comply with the law in Prop 39. The decision before the board today is to expend bond dollars, which the BOC has unanimously advised approval before you, or if the board says, I don't want to approve this item, it would be general fund dollars. We must comply with the law, and general counsel has advised us of that.
I'd like to hold this over to our next regular board meeting so that I can find out a little bit more about the repurpose and, yeah.
Sure. First, I'm going to turn to Mr. Hovereder because his team is boots on the ground with the actual make-ready work. But in talking with our council, we need to prepare the space 10 days prior to the charter school's first day of instruction. If we do not do that, then we're out of compliance with the requirements. Now, Mr. Hoveder's team manages that, so I'll turn to him in terms of the day-to-day piece.
We have a very short time frame to get a lot of schools ready for an incoming class, includes creating administrative space, and it's basically over the summer. We have to be able to comply with this. We have to start right away. The ask for today is to authorize us to spend bond money to do that accomplishment. If that's not approved today, then we won't be able to spend bond money, but that doesn't mean that we don't start today. We would have to spend general fund money to move
Much more
forward.
anxious to use bond money for this than not, but I am anxious about this technology equipment. Are you, in fact, going to be buying technology equipment for these schools?
Included as part of this ask is funding to buy technology equipment for the incoming schools.
Okay. I would like to ask that can we remove that piece of it and vote on it
Let me
separately
can I-
next week? Because I want to
okay,
know
let me
much more about what happens to the host school before I vote on that piece. I may even be willing to vote on that piece.
Let me ask again, is there an opportunity to bifurcate the allocation of dollars so that we could suspend the technology piece? Is there a way to put a number on that before the end of the meeting? Why don't you all, we hear the request, figure it out, what we can do. I have a question of, do we even know if it's one school has A, and so do we know if there's a comparability question, or is it we do computers whenever they ask for computers, but are we doing computers because one school already has computers? Okay, we don't know that. I mean, I'm gonna ask that question, but I want you to more think about if Ms. Goldberg has made a request. Let's see what we can do. I'm gonna hear from Dr. Vladovic, and then we'll go to Mr. Melvoin.
I thank you. I was the one who pulled it. I'd like to postpone it, and I know that because I felt, as I read the board report, and I understand our staff's doing wonderful. They're complying with the law. They're doing what Dave says we have to do. I understand all of that. I still was willing to push the envelope and bump it down the road because I think there needs to be a discussion. And as an educator, and this isn't anti-charter, this isn't anti...
I'm not.
No, this isn't anti-anything, what I'm going to say. I'm not categorizing yours, Jackie, at all. This is, I've been on the board for 12, 13 years. I have yet to see somebody come to the board and tell me what a wonderful time co-location is with their students, with the parents getting along. I've never seen that. What I've seen is animus. And one of the goals that I've always practiced in teaching and in education is one of our goals is to teach tolerance so all people come together and we work together. And since I've been on the board, I've had a real issue with co-location. And I've said it, and it's the law, and it's this and that. Well, I think it's bad for kids, and I just think living together because one side has to put down the other to bring in students. They're competing against each other. And I've seen in my district that a lot of this competition has not been good for children. It puts them in the middle. So what I wanted to do was put it off for a month and have a discussion because I brought a motion before the board and we sent it to the state of California saying I wanted a moratorium until they looked into it because I think there's psychological detriments to kids and I can't back off on that. So to me, I felt like Yossarian. If you've read Catch-22, if I vote yes, it's paid for by bond funds. If I vote no, it's paid for by general. And if I abstain, it's paid for by one of the two. So what I've said is I want to postpone it so I have a third option to express my dissatisfaction with the animus I've seen that's come from co-locations in my district. So I
Dr.
can't
Beacon,
vote yes,
we
I
have a
can't vote no, I can't abstain.
I heard your request for a month. Is it possible to do postpone for a week?
Well, the reason I'm saying, so everybody says it's the law. It's the law if you think it's a sound educational program. I don't believe it's a sound educational program to put two groups that are fighting each other constantly. It's worked in some locations where there are different grade levels, a high school maybe with a middle or vice versa. But when there are two elementaries on a location, it's awful for both sides. I feel bad. So I don't care when you bring it up again. I think it's a longer discussion, and I'd like to talk about, if Jeff says I can, bringing up our authorization for the superintendent to act on this and maybe bring it back to the board and let the board maybe say, we want to challenge that part of the law legally.
June 11th
Maybe
is an
we want to
alternative
challenge
date.
it in court. We've got the best lawyers in the world, and I think co-location's bad for children.
Yes,
That's
Ms.
me.
Thank you. Yes,
Now,
Ms. Bonas.
acknowledging that there's the question of bond funds versus general funds with regard to the furniture and other make-ready requirements by law, I would like to move that we postpone the technology-specific items so that we can get more information about what is the technology at the district school and what is the technology at the charter school to ensure equity, and then bring specifically that piece back at a future meeting, ideally next week if that's possible, given the short timeline. That way we could still vote on the other pieces of the legally required make-ready work.
Is there a second? Okay.
Second by Ms. Goldberg.
Yes, Mr. Melvoin.
Thank you. So a few observations. One, and I think this is a really important discussion for the board. One is that I worry, not the information we got is not necessarily accurate. And I understand why we have to put some of the Prop 39 arrangements if alternative agreements have not been executed. But for example, in just looking at the schools in my district, we have $564,000 for Citizens of the World, Mar Vista, Brentwood Science Magnet. They are not going there. Ivy, we have an allocation at Taft. They are not going there. And so one of the things that would, I think, help the board, and we could use open data on this as well, is actually an itemized, which of these are actually happening, which charter schools are getting what dollars and for what purposes. And is any of this, because I think we're hearing different things from staff, that this goes to technology, it doesn't go to technology. So I think the accuracy of the information is key. Secondly, I think we all admit that Prop 39 is an imperfect system. The challenge that I've found from the district is when we're trying to seek alternative arrangements, private sites, long-term leases, we get pushback. And so if we're going to have a conversation about how this is a broken system, let's look for valuable alternatives. One of the suggestions I had to Ms. Goldberg's question is that we have a few different systems. We have the Prop 39 charter money that, as Mark was saying, was approved by voters for charter schools. A lot of those bond payers are charter parents. That determines when a co-located school goes to a site, those funds are allocated. We have other systems in place for critical repairs, for laptop carts. A board member in my office has given grants for laptop carts at co-located schools. And so one of the suggestions I have, and can bring it back as a resolution, is we should have a dollar-for-dollar match parity for every district co-located school. If a charter comes and co-locates and gets $220,000 for whatever, that district school should get the exact same amount to use as they see fit. And I don't know that that's something that, we could bring forward as a resolution or just commit to maybe move this forward. But because I appreciate what has been raised and the fact that it sets up winners and losers. Because if you're a district teacher and a charter school is coming in, whether or not they repurpose a computer lab, they're getting new furniture. They're potentially getting that fresh coat of paint. So one suggestion to make this a win-win as opposed to a lose-lose is to suggest that even though that cuts into money, we just have a dollar-for-dollar match. And if you're a co-located school that's getting $459,000, the district school gets that amount as they see fit. And so we'll bring that back as a board resolution soon, but it's one way to try to help solve what is an imperfect system, I think creatively, and acknowledge that there don't always have to be winners and losers in this situation. So I put that forward.
Okay, we have a motion to bifurcate the dollars, authorize some of the work and hold off the other for a date, June 11th, likely. That's been seconded. Are there any comments on the motion?
Just quickly. I'm not trying to delay the actual construction part, okay? I'm ready to proceed on that right now. What I want to do is just follow up on how this technology is playing out actually at the schools. And maybe we could say some of this 15 million could make equity in the technology with the traditional school. I don't know.
And there's a chance that actually half of this is not actually being allocated
Well,
because of these.
that's why I'm
so we
saying
could
I
put
want to
it-
wait and see. I just had not seen that before. The construction part of it, I'm absolutely sure we need to start right away, and I have no problem. I don't want to hold that up. What I'm just trying to say is on the technology piece, I'm looking for equity, and I don't know if it's there. Maybe it's already there. It's just not here.
Let us address this for a second, please. Mr. Sean Jernigan from RT.
Hi, my name's Sean Jernigan, Board Member Goldberg. Welcome
Thank you.
As a resident of Board District 5. I'm
Thank
happy
you
to see
again.
representation. Regarding technology and specifically the technology equipment expenditure, it is correct. This money, some of this money will be used to buy computers for charter school students. The reason is the district has a legal obligation to make sure that what's provided to the charter school student is reasonably equivalent to that which the student would have otherwise enjoyed had they elected to participate in the district program. That's our foundation. So what the district does is it says, let's look at our state technology plan and look at the ratio of students to devices, and that determines our obligation. But we look at the whole site. We say, okay, maybe there is a computer lab being eliminated due to what is essentially a December 2010 court order to do so.
Right.
We didn't do this on our own.
I know.
Then we change the ratio of computers to students for the district students, and that's the equity piece you're appropriately concerned with. This money is there to make sure that that ratio stays the same, not just for the charter students, but also the district students in those
That's what
select
I'm looking
cases.
for,
Yes,
yeah.
ma'am, I can see that. It's so that if there is, if something does happen because of the court order, that we have this money then to come back with, unfortunately, a laptop cart instead of a lab, because if the room's gone, it's gone. But the key here is we're doing what we can to ensure that the ratio of devices to students stays the same.
All right.
And that's how we determine how many computers the charter school gets as well. It's about 5 computers a classroom. And they may.
And you make sure that there are 5 computers per classroom in the district school before you give them that, right? Or
Well, absolutely. The whole formula for how many computers the charter school gets is taken from that state technology plan to make sure the ratio
not
is the same.
talking about the state technology plan now. I'm talking about what's actually existing in the district
ma'am.
school with which it is co-located.
Yes.
They may not have that 5.
That's correct.
Class.
And so then we will also remediate that with this money.
I see.
And so the way we know that is we have to talk to our principals. We have to talk to our chapter chairs.
Ms. Garcia. So in my humble opinion, replacing a computer lab with some carts is not the same thing.
It is not the same thing.
Okay.
And we,
I think it is
yeah.
either.
No, can we vote on the motion?
Let me get a little bit more information. Let's get the construction
Very good.
going.
Superintendent, you'll determine if we're coming back on the 28th or if we're coming back on the 11th. I expect it's likely the 11th, the 28th, it's 4 days, and we're fine. Okay, let's do it on the 11th. Bring it back on the 11th if possible. If not, let us know when we have to.
Let's vote on the construction today.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're not bifurcating dollar amounts, we are bifurcating work. So everything but the technology is being authorized.
Right.
So, is the superintendent withdrawing that portion and amending this board report to include that, or do you want the board to vote on the amendment?
So we're withdrawing. What we will do is come back with answers as to, first and foremost, what is law versus practice, so there's some clarity. Because is it state law but different practice in school, to the point about what equity looks like? We will come back with clarity as to bond fund, general fund, so we know where the dollars are going to come from. We will come back with a clearer picture for each school, to the point about sufficient and accurate information for each site to make sure these are actual dollars that will get spent or not get spent.
All right.
And lastly, probably most importantly, we'll come back with a proposed set of solutions where we either can act at the state level or locally.
Great.
Because this is a gift that keeps on giving unless we actually get to solutions.
Truly,
right?
truly, thank you.
So our revised proposal, I'm not sure if that's the right word, Jefferson, would be to bifurcate, as Board Member Goldberg has suggested, commence with the construction work, come back with clarity on, or Board Member Gomez, come back with clarity on the items we just cited, plus any other questions the board members have as soon as we can.
Okay.
So what I'd like to do is.
It is funny that all 3 women on the board at this moment have last names that start with G. That's a ha-ha.
You just got there?
We've been commenting on that all day now. So we're going to withdraw the amendment, if that's okay, Ms. Gomez and Ms. Goldberg. We're going to amend the board report to where it says to make any associated purchases excluding technology items, if that's okay. And then the technology items will come back as with all those explanations as another board report.
And I'll ask Mr. Hovatter, but there may be physical infrastructure that encompasses technology items. So if they're opening a wall, please put in the requisite.
So anything that's construction-based, it's really just computers, laptops,
Hardware.
carts,
Just want to make sure we
peripherals,
had
whatever.
clarity to staff so they know
Right.
what direction to head in.
Awesome.
We'll mark the board report as amended by the superintendent.
And
Thank you.
Superintendent, with the information, could you also provide us information on the age of the devices at both co-located schools? even if they both have the same devices, if the traditional district school has devices that are super old, that doesn't feel like equity. So.
Great.
All right.
We know they're all just going to be doing cursive, though, going forward, so.
Any objections, Mr. Okeke? None. Board members? Nothing.
To say, I'm not going to vote, I'm not going to abstain, because either vote means I'm voting for one or the other. So, as Usarian would
Not gonna
say,
vote, you're not gonna abstain.
I'm not going to say a word.
Then you'll be absent.
Then I'll walk away,
Thank you.
because I can't support it.
So board members, Mr. Okeke voted yes. All the board members present in the room were voting yes. Item is approved, board report as amended.
Thank you.
6-0.